It's really good to be here. I'm going to talk not about the generalities which we've had so far, which we all understand and we all share. I just want to share with you what we're trying to do in Brighton and Hove. And you see it says working towards. We're not there yet. We're on the road to doing it, but we have a great deal of work to do. Brighton and Hove is a city by the sea, 273,000 people, 8 million visitors a year, turnover of 5.2 billion. We're not doing badly economically. Jobs went up by 2.5% last year. We've got the 10th highest business startup in the UK. 84% of businesses employ fewer than 10 people. 2 universities, 30,000 students, rather like your city here, Jyväskylään, where you also have a great many students and 2 universities. And that, of course, feeds into our economy very importantly. It's a creative and green city. That is the iconic pavilion building in the background. There are 18,000 people working in the creative sector, 1,500 companies and freelancers working in digital sector, the biggest arts festival in England, a growing eco-tech sector with more than 100 companies, and the first and only green-led council in the UK, note the shoes. We've got 3 key targets as a council. The first is reducing inequalities, the second is greater involvement for citizens in everything we do, and the third is creating a sustainable one-planet city that needs only 1 planet to sustain it, rather than 3 needed at present. And you, of course, are calling it Resource Wisdom. This leaflet is very much like a leaflet we've produced, and I will send you some of ours. The language is slightly different, but the intent and the purpose is exactly the same, and the problems and the challenges we face are also similar. These are the 10 principles of One Planet Living, which were drawn up by a man called Desai, who is coming to Jyväskylään later this year, and who is working with us. I won't go through these here because I'm going to do them individually as we go through, but it's zero carbon, zero waste, sustainable transport, sustainable materials, local and sustainable food, sustainable water, land use and wildlife, culture and community, equity and local economy, and health and happiness. Well, the first one is making building more energy efficient and delivering all energy with renewable technologies. Housing is the biggest problem for us in achieving zero carbon in Brighton. 60% of the housing was built before 1945, 40% before 1914. Rented housing, almost 30% of the housing in Brighton and Hove is rented privately, and that presents a big problem. Then we have owner-occupied housing, people who own their own houses, about 60%, which is low by British standards. It's generally about 70%. And then we have council housing, social housing. I've used the tower blocks as the example, although most of it is low-rise. And this is the first One Planet scheme in Britain. It's taken from an acute angle. It's a bit like the Flatiron in New York. I'll come back to that later, but the One Planet scheme, which Desai was involved with, is an exemplar, and I can tell you about some of the things on that. It uses renewable energy sources. It is car-free. There is no provision for cars. There's no car parking. There is cycle parking. Great care was taken to use local materials where possible and to reduce as far as possible the use of materials with a great many embedded emissions in them already. Zero waste. Reducing waste where possible and ultimately sending zero waste to landfill. Well, this is one where we have a great deal to do. I apologise for the picture of myself. Our achievement so far on waste is not good. We only recycle about 29% of what we produce. We have a lot of catching up to do. 45% of the waste goes to an incinerator for energy reuse, and the rest still goes to landfill, which is a huge, huge waste. Now, as well as all the formal things that are done, there are 3 or 4 very big charities in the city that collect and recycle and resell. This particular charity runs a hospice for people who are terminally ill. That is the stuff they've collected in 1 week. They collect all of that every week. They have a huge team of volunteers who go through all of that, sift out the stuff that's worth keeping, and the rest of it will either be recycled or go to landfill. But there are about 4 or 5 organisations doing that. There's one organisation called Magpie, which is also a private recycling firm, a not-for-profit cooperative organisation that collects as well as the council collection. One of the main features about all this work in Brighton, which is absolutely essential, is the community buy-in to it all. We have a lot of small organisations who are supporting the City Council in the work that we do, and I'll say some more about that in a minute. But that's a very important element, and we have yet to deal with it properly. Sustainable transport, we're doing better on. This is car-free day. We have a car-free day every year, and on this day we had a cycle ballet along the seafront. But on cycling, we're doing very well. We're spending at the moment about £5 million on new cycle lanes, particularly out to the university, where a lot of students come in and out on bicycles. We've had the highest growth of cycling to work in the UK between 2001 and 2011. Car use fell for work travel from 56% to 41%. We have a car club which has 60 vehicles all over the city which people can use for the day. And we have a very, very good bus system. In fact, it's the most successful bus system in Britain, and has added more passengers as a percentage than any other bus system we have. We produce travel plans for schools, for businesses, for any organisation in the city that wants one. We've got a new cycling hub at the station. A lot of people cycle to the station and then go to London. We're going to have a hub with better parking for cycles, with showers and lockers that people can use. And we've also got £3 million from central government for bus travel improvements. That's things like signs to tell people when the buses are coming and so on. But we still have congestion. Transport pollution contributes 26% of our carbon footprint, so we need to deal with that. We've just incidentally introduced 20-mile-an-hour zones over all the domestic areas in the city. That's the car club car. That is the big lemon bus, the yellow bus there. This is the Green Councillors on their away day, or some of them. That bus runs on cooking oil. And we have a dozen of those. It's run by one of the members of our party. It's, again, a not-for-profit organisation. Does a lot of the shuttle work backwards and forwards to the university, and is able to stay afloat because in the summer it takes people backwards and forwards to Glastonbury Festival and all the other rock and roll festivals across Britain. Sustainable materials. Well, they're a foundation really of everything we do. We try to promote those in all areas of what we do. Using local materials is very important as well, rather than transporting materials for miles and miles and having high fuel costs. There's also the use of recycled materials, and at the moment there is a project in Brighton called the Waste House, which is a house, a two-storey house, that's being built entirely from waste. Now the normal practice when you build a house is to do the design and then buy the materials to go with it. This one is being built differently. There was a design at the beginning, but it's altered as the materials come in. So as things become available, for instance, the maintenance contractor for the City Council had some plywood delivered, a lot of plywood, and it was found to be damaged. So they donated it to the Waste House. So the Waste House then had to change the design of the house to accommodate the new plywood. And to show you what the buy-in is like on this, a team of students from the university got up at 8 o'clock in the morning, students, 8 o'clock in the morning, to unload the timber when it arrived. So they're involved in it as well. And there's also a training element in it with young people at the City College who are doing apprenticeships in building. One of the ideas they're looking at the moment is they're taking old video cassettes, taking the video out and filling them with different materials. They're working with toothbrushes at the moment. They're filling old video cassettes with toothbrushes and seeing how they work as insulation material to use in the walls. They've got 80,000 old-fashioned ring binders, which the universities have given them. They're trying to find a way of doing that at the moment. The whole thing is being filmed. It will be shown on television in Britain. It's really a demonstration of how different materials can be used, again, to build new homes. Food is a big success. There's me and my chains again, I'm sorry. This is the sign of an ancient Iron Age hill fort, which had been overgrown with sycamore trees. The tree planted there is an elm, but further along is a big new apple orchard. The area around Brighton and Hove has 29 indigenous apple species, and we've planted 2 orchards in the city to bring them back into use in the city. Very nice too, some of them. But here you see some of these people work for the City Council, some of them work for an NGO, and the rest are local people. All the people on the left there, they're all local people who came to support the project. They live just down the hill behind those trees. They feel ownership about the project. They're interested in its future. And again, as I said earlier, this buy-in from the community, for me, is essential to all of this work. If it's going to, nothing works unless the community is involved in it, in a city. On the other, we have 120 different food projects across the city, large and small. This is, on my left there, is Britain's only Green Member of Parliament, Caroline Lucas. This is a tiny scrap of land next to a railway station. There's one this side, and there's one the other side. And this lady and her friends have turned it into a little allotment. So they're growing apple trees there along the wall, and you can see they've got beds with different vegetables in. There are about 30 local people involved in that. And again, the other thing about all this, of course, it builds community spirit. It brings people together. There's also, obviously, everything one does like this is good for biodiversity, which is very important too. This is, there's a large country house on the edge of the city, which belongs to the council with a large park, and the back of it is a huge area given over to growing. And again, most of it is done by community groups and volunteers. They do a variety of things, but there's fruit growing, vegetable growing, flower growing. They're businesses too. They employ people, they give people work, and again, very important for the biodiversity. This, by the way, is in the national park. There's a new national park around Brighton, the South Downs National Park. Brighton owns 10,000 acres of land around the city, which is 27 farms, all belonging to the city and all tenanted. We are now in a national park, which is good in some ways, but makes life difficult in others. So we have to be particularly careful about the stewardship of the national park and all the beautiful countryside that is in it. These beds, I talked to you earlier about the One Planet scheme. These are on the rooftop of the One Planet, of the block behind the block you saw. There are 2 roofs which have got these allotment beds on them where people can grow. There's a waiting list to get onto them, and we've issued a piece of planning guidance, a planning note to developers in the city. Anybody who now wants to build a development with a flat roof must do this on the top of it. And I have to say the builders have come back and they're all very cooperative on the idea. Again, all the qualities of doing, of producing food, of biodiversity, people working together. Sustainable water. Sustainable water is very difficult. The target for water use in the UK is 100 litres per day. The general usage is about 150. The One Planet scheme, which Poren Desai has designed at Sutton in Surrey, has managed to get it down to about 80 a day, but that includes the use of recycled grey water for the toilets and for watering the gardens. We've begun a programme in all our buildings of trying to reduce water, and we've been successful in our leisure centre. Simple things like changing the flush arrangements in toilets. We're saving a great deal of water and also money. We've changed the, if you'll pardon me telling you, the flush arrangements, the urinals in the men's lavatories in the centre, and it's saving us £10,000 a year, and has also cut water usage, which is important. The part of England we live in is the driest part, but also that part which is most prone to flooding. And all of our water in Brighton and Hove comes from the chalk aquifer. No reservoirs, it's all in the chalk underneath the downs outside. So we depend on that, and our use of it wisely is very important. There's also the need for the greater use of recycled water in new homes, which I mentioned. And we work closely with the local water authority to try and improve that. That's a local park in the city. There's also actually a watercourse that runs through it. We're using some of the water out of there now directly to water the park rather than bring it in from other places. Land use and wildlife. Well, that's in the middle of all that we do. This is a section of the little garden, one of the little gardens I told you about on the edge of the city. We're doing a lot of work on land use and wildlife. We've recently produced a biodiversity action plan. There's a lot of wildflower and tree planting on verges throughout the city. All of the verges, the central verges in the main roads, now have wildflowers in them rather than grass, and they're planted so that they change through the year, and I'm being waved at, so I have to hurry up. Equity in the local economy, very important. I think I might have gone through that one. But equity in the local economy, we've introduced a living wage in the city. Nobody working for the council or any of the other public bodies earns less than £7.45 an hour, which is about €8, slightly more than €8. The living wage for the minimum wage for Britain is only £6.19. We started it, we've passed it on to the Chamber of Commerce, so the private sector is now promoting it amongst the private sector, which is much better than us doing it. We're a fair trade city. We're doing a lot of work supporting local businesses. We have a lot of apprenticeship and training schemes for young people on the go at the moment, which are very important. We're very keen on the concept of sticky money, the money that's earned in the city, staying in the city, and not going back to London or somewhere else. Close cooperation with the Economic Partnership, with the Chamber of Commerce, and I have to say, business in the city is behind us on all this green stuff, and so is the third sector. We're a member of a local enterprise partnership. Health and happiness, culture in the community, children's festival. The children's parade at the beginning of the festival every year is the biggest children's parade in Europe. That was Easter Sunday, the drag queen Easter egg race. We have 35,000 gay and lesbian people who live in Brighton. They were running to raise money for a hospice for people with AIDS, HIV. The gay and lesbian community is a defining part of our city, and they make a big contribution both culturally and economically. I talked about that. Here's an example. The man on the right has learning difficulties. He's in a supported employment scheme that employs 20 people, which we support. They've just made those banners for the trumpets for the High Sheriff of Sussex. Without our support, it wouldn't happen. Health and happiness. That's the centre of Brighton on a Saturday when all the roads are shut to traffic and people spill onto the pavement to enjoy themselves. Green Brighton Guide. We're promoting Brighton as a tourist venture for people who are interested in green things, and I put that in there to show there's an economic dividend in doing this as well. You can actually make money from being green. So there's that side to it which is worth pursuing. And this is the last bit. We've just set up the consultation on a biosphere diversity zone, a UN zone. We've managed to get the surrounding authorities to come in with us. The Biosphere Reserve, I'm sorry it's called. It's called Here Here. The man to my left there is the head of Friends of the Earth locally. Again, a lot of community buy-in. That is the framework for economic, environmental and education improvement. And that's the framework around our One Planet Living, which we're going to pursue for the future. Thank you very much. And the pig did...
Don't go away.
Right,
we have
okay.
a few minutes for questions, but first I have to say I very much admire your great shoes. Applause for that also. Great. My favorite color as well.
Mine too.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Make money by being green.
Yeah.
That's something to think about today as well.
Ecotourism.
Ecotourism
Yeah.
as well. Great achievements with your One Planet scheme as well. This really raises the bar for all of us in Jyväskylä. And I had one idea from your speech. Could we have a live TV show about resource wisdom in Jyväskylä? An idea to think about.
Yeah.
The local national TV. But hey, we have a couple of minutes for questions for Bill. And we have two gentlemen on the right and the left. Please raise your hand and speak to the microphone because of the streaming. So, who's first? Who's eager to start? All right.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. You mentioned that you like to use local resources and local materials. Have you run into any problems with the procurement legislation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But there was an act passed in the British Parliament in January of this year called the Local Value Act. 3 years ago, there was a huge outcry in Britain because the contract to build some railway carriages, which had previously been done in Derby, in the centre of Britain, went to a foreign company. And the point was made that it's not just building the railway carriages that brings the money, the effect of that spreads out across the local city. So there is a local value to using local produce or doing things locally. As a result, a bill went through Parliament, was passed in January, and now a local authority like ours can take into account the local value issues when it's deciding what to use. We still have to deal with EU procurement, of course, but that does give us an extra edge. So, for instance, at the moment we're looking at letting a new catering contract for some of the bigger venues in the city, the Pavilion, the Dome, and the hallmark buildings of the city. And in that we're taking into account what I was talking about earlier, the sticky money, the value of keeping that local, keeping the money in the city. It is a problem, of course, but we do have some help with it now, yes.
Thank you. Another question?
Yes, thanks for your presentation. It makes me feel like I want to visit Brighton already. So
good, I'll give you the forms.
It's very good PR as well. What I want to ask is, have you been actively involving citizens to develop these initiatives and actions?
Very much so. And in fact, quite often, the initiatives start with local people. In the area of the city that I represent, which is a 19th century area of very narrow streets, it's known locally as Museley Mountain. It's on a hill. It's called Museley Mountain because it's full of social workers, teachers, university teachers, people who work in the media. They're all people with a lot to say. And they've set up a thing called HASSLE, which is Hanover Action. The area is called Hanover, by the way. Hanover Action on Sustainable Living. They meet every fortnight. They entered a national competition where you simply had to... The organisation that got the most names on a web petition was given £10,000 by an energy company. They won it by 1%. I put the thing on the council website where we've got 6,000 people working. They all voted for it, which is how we got it through. With that £10,000, they are retrofitting the community centre in the centre of our community. Now, as a Green councillor, people like that are on my back all the time about various issues. We also have an energy co-op, which is, it needs to get to 2,500 members, and then it can set up properly and start buying green energy to sell on to people who are members. We have an organisation for everything in Brighton and Hove. It is said that Brighton and Hove has more voluntary organisations per square inch than any other place in Britain. And having met most of them in the last year, I'm prepared to believe it. So yeah, there's a huge buy-in. I mean, I mentioned cycling earlier, big cycling lobby in the city. We had a couple of bad accidents. 2 women students were killed, separate occasions, on the road out to the university. Both the universities are on the edge of the city in the same place. We had enormous pressure then from Friends of the Earth and others to do something about the cycling lanes. So yeah, genuinely, there is a big community participation in all of these things that we're doing.
Thank you. We have room for one short question, if there's any. Okay. If not,
could I just
of course,
thank Citra for inviting me today and thank Marcus for his hospitality last night. And we have worked with Jyväskylään before on the Euro Towns project. This is the beginning of a new relationship which we can all learn from each other. None of us has all the answers. We all need to learn from each other. Towns and cities, countries as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great to have you here.